Well, isn't this just wonderful? Cessair expels, throwing her hands into the air before placing them on her hips and glaring at the guards. Then I pay you specifically to keep the agency out of this establishment. The agency? Someone from the crowd exclaims. For your participation in tonight's events, you will all be required to come with us, Ava orders in a booming voice that fills the room. Panic streaks through the masses, the herd of people rushing to find exits, smashing into one another and knocking over any obstacles in their paths. Tables topple to the ground, and the sharp crash of glasses shattering joins the startled frenzy of yells and cries, and people spill from the room in all directions. Amongst the panic, I see a streak of auburn hair disappear behind the curtains. A woman I haven't seen before steps in front of the other members of Unit Victor that I do know. Her eyes, framed by pink-tipped lashes, make a quick scan of the mess before darting to Ava. Stop those heading down the hallways. You take care of the rabble here. And without another word, Unit Victor slipped down the corridors, lost among the fray. Unit Bravo remained in the main room, trying to herd those not able to squeeze out of doors or bolt past them. As the two units start to deal with the main bulk of the problem, I whip around and drop to my knees at Elidor's side. Elidor? I whisper, grabbing his shoulders to attempt to hold him up a little. His hair slides across his face as he turns to look at me. You? I breathe out my worry. Yes, me. Are you alright? No, he croaks, resting against my grip as though he might fall onto his side. I do my best to keep him upright, even though his solid frame threatens to drag me over with him. You're going to be, I state, inspecting the rings of light that swirl around his body. Do you know what this is? His eyes fall to the threads of glowing symbols. It's a binding spell. It will keep me from trying to escape the bonds of the spell, and it keeps me weakened, he explains through a wheezed breath. My stomach knots as each word he speaks grows fainter. How do I break it? He reaches a hand out to grasp mine. I will be fine now. Capture those responsible, then you can free me. But his fingers clasp tighter with an urgency flashing in his dull eyes. Don't let them all escape and do this again. I swallow hard before nodding and springing to my feet. With a steadying breath, I push myself towards the sheet of thick black velvet curtains where the auctioneer had disappeared. Right up until the point when I'm blocked by a barricade of tuxedo-suited supernaturals who come pouring out from the opening in the curtains. I back up a few steps as they advance. The longer I spend dealing with this lot, the more chances Sarah has of escaping from us forever, which means I'm going to need to think quickly and I'm going to need help. Hmm. Give them something they want more than they want me. What exactly is that referring to? Because that feels like the most certain way of doing it. But you know what? I want to see. What is it? Even as my mind flashes with panic like fireworks, blinding any thoughts, one spark burns brighter than the others. I glance down at my hand. I do know something supernaturals want more than me. As the idea forms, so does an unraveling list of scenarios detailing how this could go so very, very wrong. So I decide it's best to go ahead before the list gets any longer. Turning to my closest ally, I see Farah dodging a weakly thrown hit from one of the bidders. She gleefully darts about them, and they're wrapped up in sturdy, glowing cuffs before they realize what's happened. Farah! I yell, retreating further from the wall of supernatural stalking towards me. The vampire stares across the crowd to me and gives a wave. What's up? I think I'm going to need some backup, I call. She's at my side in a flash. I don't know how she even navigated through the turmoil below the stage, but I shake myself out of my awe. I need you to keep these supernaturals focused on what I'm about to do so they forget about coming after me. You think you can manage that? I ask, offering a terse smile at the supernaturals who have their hands outstretched like talons on birds of prey. She nods, almost tipping back off the stage as the supernaturals crowd around us. Sure thing, but what are you going to... I answer her question by stooping down to retrieve a fallen crystal from the chandelier and slashing it across the back of my forearm. Blood ripples across the thin wound, a small line of it dripping down my arm and onto the stage floor. A hush falls across the room. Most of those present give a sudden sniff at the air, sending an icy streak that shoots through me and chills my body, but I push myself past the fear. Here it is, I state, dropping the crystal onto the stage, where drops of blood paint the wood. Have at it. The amount of blood is minuscule, but I'm almost thrust out of the way as the supernaturals dive for it, trying to lap it up off their fingers as they wipe it from the ground. The richly dressed bidders start to clamber onto the stage to join the fray. A piece of cloth is suddenly pressed into my palm, and I glance to Farah. Wrap the wound so they focus on this blood and not that, she tells me. Then get after Cessair. We'll mop up here. I nod, not hesitating before dashing through the curtains into the dark hallway beyond, winding the strip of cloth around the cut as I sprint. The corridor is full of darkness, almost physical in its thickness as it grasps my limbs and tries to hold me back, but I allow myself to be enveloped by it. It should help me slip by if I'm followed by anyone. The tunnel eventually weaves downwards and dips beneath the building. I run my hands along the walls to guide me. Rough stone brushes beneath my fingers, awkwardly carved as though these weren't original hallways, but something forced into the structure at a later time. The walls are oddly chill considering the warmth of the summer, almost causing me to draw away as the cold bites with icy viciousness into my palm. But I keep going, pressing on until I can see a sliver of moonlight up ahead. I spill out into a more purpose-built room, my stomach clenching at the sight of rows of cells lining the walls along the corridor like horrifying paintings. I lurch towards the nearest one, hoping I might at least help someone tonight. But there's no one inside, only a splintered excuse for a bench and a crumpled moth-eaten blanket. I shudder to think how many cells must be buried down here beneath Cesaire's lair above. As I push myself away from the bars, the door swings open at my weight, creaking on its hinges. The lock grinds with a squeak against its latch. Glancing at the lock, I discover that the metal is warped and misshapen. I touch it and feel a slight tingle, and I give a smile. Yes, my mother got them free after all. Hello? A whisper gasps from further down. A thin arm reaches out from between bars further up the corridor. Maybe not all of them. I rush down towards the person, stumbling to a stop as I find a lanky elderly man. It's an odd sight to see a fine suit hanging from his bony body. The bangles on his arm click together, though maybe that sound is his bones. His alabaster skin looks even paler beneath the shreds of moonlight. Heavy dark circles ring his brown eyes as he stares at me. You aren't with them, are you? It's a statement, not a question, but I find myself shaking my head in response anyway. No, I'm with the agency. He sags with relief against the bars. His body so petite I'm surprised he doesn't just sink through the gap. His eyes manage to find their way to mine again. You're with the agent who came through to help us before. He must mean Rebecca, so I give a nod. Then I glance down the row of cells with a frown. Why are you still here? She was supposed to free everyone. We could hear a commotion from above. She knew she was running out of time to save everyone, so I told her to save the younger ones. His pale, chapped lips lift into a smile half hidden behind a bushy grey beard. She managed to help most of them. A sudden burst of loud, angry voices ricochets down the hallway, and we both whip our heads around to look for the source. What's going on? I ask. His shoulders sink down and his brows lower over his eyes. The trappers, they've been trying to get us out of here before your agency can save us. My eyes shoot open as panic bursts with stinging adrenaline in my chest. What? They've taken 10 people while all the fighting has been happening up there. He lifts a long finger to where I can hear the scuffle of footsteps from above. A scream shatters the darkness, the sound ripping through me as a burst of bright blue shivers down the hallway. How many of there are you? I ask with a deepening frown. Too many for you to set free if you don't want to risk Cesaire escaping, he states as though able to read the thoughts I had just been processing. It won't take long for the agents above to subdue the crowd, and then they'll follow on and release everyone down here. It'll be half an hour at most, but how many will the trappers manage to steal away in that time? My focus swings between the door where the auctioneer escaped and the trappers lurking in the darkness. If I leave, I might still be able to catch up with Cesare, but if I go, I swallow down at my sudden decision and stare back at the man. He smiles at me. We have to go after Cesare, whether we can catch her or not, but if there's even a slight chance, we have to. It's just, yeah, we have to. I'm sorry. With my decision made, I press myself back into the gloom of the corridor. I have to go after her. If she escapes, this will only happen again and again. Then go, or you'll be too late. The man waves a sinewy hand at me, but the hope in his eyes is dulled instantly. I swing around and dash towards the door at the end of the hallway before I change my mind. As I burst out for the door, I only just manage to avoid the branch which comes arcing wildly down mere inches from my head. I spin out of the way as Cesare hauls the splintered heavy makeshift weapon back up. Fury dances like a wildfire in her glare. Do you know what you've cost me? Her words screech out of her as she makes a little lunge in my direction. I easily sidestep the lumbering attack. Yeah, we're focusing on avoiding her attacks. I don't reply. Engaging her with her means distracting myself from the weighty weapon she wields. Although obviously not a fighter, if she manages an accidental hit, that thing could do some serious damage. And I've taken enough serious damage lately to last me a lifetime. When my silence apparently becomes insulting, she lunges at me with a shriek, stumbling forwards with the weight of her weapon as she attempts another attack. I leap back. The branch thuds into the ground, where mud and grass splatter from the impact, dusting Cesare in a thin layer of mud that blinds her momentarily. But that moment is enough. I dash forward, snatching at the sleeve of her dress to drag her backwards, letting her momentum force her back until she slams into the tree behind her. She tries to suck in a winded breath, a task made harder as I shove my forearm against her throat. It's over, Cesare. I allow a tinge of gloating to enter my voice. She grabs my arm but doesn't try to drag it away, snorting out her breath with a smirk. Arrest me! You'll be doing me a favor. I try not to let her words affect me, but my brows twitch as curiosity trickles through me. Being locked up in an agency cell is likely the only place she won't reach me. Her smirk turns to a smug grin. You're saving my life doing this. Every cell in my being is screaming at me to ask who, to ask what she means, but I grit my teeth to hold a flurry of questions back. If there's one thing I learned, it's that she seems to have a talent for manipulation. Thankfully, a rustle from the undergrowth helps stop me before I give in to the temptation of asking questions. 3 agents step out of the underbrush, wielding bolts. Are you okay, detective? One of them asks, advancing on Cesare with cautious steps. I push myself back from my prisoner, who slumps to the ground the moment I release my arm. I'm fine. I spin away. Take her in. The last thing I see of Cesare is her being placed in ruined handcuffs, a relieved smile still on her face. Following the trail the agents pointed out, I make it back to the house to find the front of it awash with agents and SUVs. I'm not sure where I could be useful, so I slump against one of the cars to enjoy a moment's respite. But it's happily interrupted by a familiar voice. Babe? Fry yells across the sudden mass of agents weaving about the scene. Jules? I search through the sea of grey armored agents and richly dressed bidders before I find the amber gaze I'm searching for. Farah pushes through and springs towards me, wrapping me up in a hug that makes every bit of tension in my body melt away. Farah, I mumble, wrapping my arms around her in return. Just saying her name grounds me amongst the hectic ruckus happening behind me. I bury my face into her shoulder, drawing in the familiar fresh scent of her. It's good to have you back, babe, she says, pulling away reluctantly but keeping her arms clasped around me. She has to raise her voice to be heard over the gasps and protests of the people being arrested behind us. It's good to be back with you, I say with a smile I couldn't hide even if I tried. My gaze shifts to the others. And you guys too, of course. Sure, Morgan comments with so much disbelief it stains even that simple word. But our reunion is blown away by the strong gust of a pair of wings and the steely gaze of Sin. A host of agents swing around to face the Anunnaki, vaults drawn and strange powers at the ready. Unit Bravo move to join them. Sin doesn't flinch at their defensive motions. He merely stands silently, wings curled behind him, his dark gaze piercing through the crowd until it finds mine. You, he booms. The powerful depth of his voice almost seems to make the ground shake, but I step out from the crowd, only pausing when Farah's arms curl around me. I glance back at her. It's all right. She swings the worried gaze between me and Sin before eventually letting go, even if none of the worry drops from her frown. The semicircle of agents parts to let me through as I step out into the clearing, which feels worryingly like an arena. What are you doing here? The words fall from me in a slow rhythm, my confusion at his presence making my thoughts muddled. Why wouldn't you just leave? You had the chance. He doesn't even spare a moment's glance at the agents lined up behind me. Because you have earned my respect throughout all of this. So you risked capture for a chat? I ask with a brow arched. He lets out a light chuckle. It was more that I believed in you. I nod at him. Thank you. He returns the respectful gesture. It's then that Sin's attention does snap away, specifically to the handcuffed auctioneer being shoved into the back of an agency van. You arrested her? Sin asks with a frown, watching the scene with wide eyes as though unable to believe that it's actually playing out. I nod. Yeah. A sharp breath shoots out of him. I believed she had escaped, that I would live with her shadow haunting me for eternity. His throat bobs. Though that would be what I deserve after all I did for her greed. There's a definite lift of release that breaks across Sin's shoulders, even his wings seeming to fluff up on his back and glisten with renewed energy. So, What do you plan to do now? I ask. For the first time, he smiles. It's an expression that seems to break through a shadow of torment until light shines through his gaze. I will fly, he replies, staring up at the sky with such longing that I almost wish I could join him. His ease and freedom makes me realize I have an opportunity. An Anunnaki would make a powerful ally, as well as likely just a good person to have around. And if he's looking for atonement, then helping the agency would certainly be one way to do it. Hmm. I mean, yes, but we'll go with that. You know, there's always another option. I begin letting the words hang to see if he's interested. He glances at me, waiting for me to continue, so I take that as a cue that he is. I spread my hands out towards those around me, all still on guard, though the tension doesn't crackle across the clearing as it once did. You could help the agency and everyone they protect. He almost breaks into a laugh. And you're permitted to make such an offer? Why not? Not everyone might deserve a second chance, but you do, and I see no problem with offering you yours with us. I smile at him. We could do a lot of good together. He drops his gaze with a hollow smile before shifting his shoulders back. I appreciate your consideration, but I'm afraid I cannot join you. I nod, not really having expected anything else, but it was worthwhile to ask. Well, we're here if you ever change your mind. An occurrence unlikely to happen, but my lifetime spans centuries, so one can never know where the future will lead. With a final, more genuine smile, he spreads his wings and lifts off into the air. The beat of his wings is so powerful that it leaves a ripple in the grass, rustling through the trees with its force. As I watch him turn into little more than a feathered silhouette against the moon, an agent shuffles up next to me. Detective? The man chokes out, following my eyeline as Sin disappears into the depths of the night. Yeah? He licks his lips and gives a wince. I'm not sure we were supposed to let him just leave like that. I turn to him with a half smile and place a hand on his shoulder, feeling the chill of his chainmail beneath the grey fabric. How did you plan to stop him exactly? His hand holds up his vault with a weak grasp. I pat him on the shoulder before letting my hand drop. Yeah, good luck with that if you ever come up against him in the future. I stroll away towards Unit Bravo as the agent sags a little in realization and heads back to his own comrades. It's difficult to completely put all of what's happened behind me, but as I take in the sight of the freed kidnapped victims, it's easier to press the persistent memories back. Even more so as I see Addie clinging to her parents as though she will never let them go. The whole family radiates with a bright glow. I cross my arms with as much of a contented sigh as I can manage, watching them with a smile. With Césaire securely in the agency's custody, tonight is a definite end to her time in Wayhaven. Next chapter.